Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rocio from SAGNY. I apologize if I sound a little bit hoarse. I've been sick, so if you guys can't understand me or hear me, please let me know. But today's presenter is David Shultz from Distributor Central. He is one of Expo's best. If you were not able to make it out to Expo in Vegas earlier this month, we've brought him to you. David here will be presenting to us customer engagement in a digital world. It's designed for distributors interested in learning how to leverage their website and other digital properties to increase their customer engagement. This session is being recorded. It will be on our YouTube later on. If you guys have any questions, please do not hesitate to type them out into the question panel that you see there on your GoToWebinar screen, and type them out, and I will read them out to David as they come in. David, thank you so much for joining us. It's all yours.
Oh, thank you, Rocio. And yeah, as you can hear, she's been under the weather the last couple of days, it sounds like, so we hope she's feeling better. I want to thank everybody for having me today. I don't believe I've actually done a presentation for SAGNY yet, so we're reaching out to new regions of the country that we haven't yet talked to. But if this was a presentation that I did at Expo a few weeks ago, and it basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about digital tools that you guys can use to help better engage your customers. And a lot of you probably have websites, and when I did this presentation in Las Vegas, it was fairly interactive, and I forced people to give up their secrets about some of the things they've been doing as well. And so we're going to talk about some of those things here, and I apologize if I can't interact with you in real time. Like Rocio said, if you have some questions, feel free to ask them as we go along, and then I'll leave a little bit of time at the end for some questions as well. And if we get a lot of questions, I can get back to you guys via email to answer those as well. A little bit about me real quick. As she mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Operations for Distributor Central, which is one of the service providers in the industry, and we're based out of Kansas City. We've been around we launched in 98, 99, I believe, and I've been around basically since the beginning. I started out writing code for Distributor Central, and fortunately now we have a lot of very talented developers on our staff, so I have a lot more time to go out and talk to our clients, talk to people in the industry, kind of find out what kind of technology they need to help run their businesses. I'm also on the board of PPAM, which is our Midwest Regional Association, and most recently was also asked to join in the Professional Development Committee of PPAI, which, if you guys are getting a CE credit today, that's part of what we do is kind of vet education in the industry and encourage more education events at some of the events around the country, including the major trade shows as well as at the regional level. In Kansas City, I also am on the board of the Big Six Celebrity Weekend, which is a charity event we have here in Kansas City that raises money for our local children's cancer hospital. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk to you about today are things that I use in my role with that charity event here in Kansas City. And so you'll kind of see how some of those play into that as well. I do have a family here in Kansas City that keeps me extremely busy, and what very little free time I have left, I like to pretend I'm a rock star by playing in a band on the weekend. So that's my creative outlet. A little bit about Distributor Central. As I said, we've been around since 1998. We started off basically as a centralized product database for the industry. We spent a long time trying to come up with a database that could handle products across the spectrum, everything from hard goods to apparel to everything else, that would allow distributors to sell these products electronically or use their websites to engage with their customers. And so that's kind of the take on this that I bring to this conversation and the perspective that you're going to get from me today. That is the actual hard drive that we started on back in 1998, and now everything we do is in the cloud, and our user base is comprised of both distributors and suppliers across the industry, and we're seeing upwards of 4.5 million searches a month. We host websites for about 8,000 distributors in the industry, and we have about 20,000 distributors using Distributor Central. So that's just kind of give you a quick perspective on what I do and what our company does. And when I think about where we started and where we are today, and in particular where technology is in the industry today in terms of some of these tools we're talking about, it does tend to make my head explode some days. So I'm going to try not to make your heads explode today, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of these tools at a very basic level. As you can imagine, any of the things we talk about today could probably be a class in and of themselves in terms of designing a website or how to use social media or how to get the most out of email marketing. So I'm going to touch briefly on these things, and if you want to learn more about each of the individual things, there are a lot of classes, a lot of great education sessions out there in the industry that some of the veterans are doing. And so if you want to dive into any of these things in great detail, be sure to keep an eye on those and look for those education opportunities coming up. I'm going to talk a little bit about engagement too, and what we mean. You hear a lot about engagement these days, and more in terms of social media, but really what this all boils down to is what we and other service providers in the industry are trying to do is provide a set of tools that allows you guys to save time, save money, better engage with your customers using some of these digital tools to help you guys spend more time doing what you do best, building relationships with your customers and selling. So I'm going to run through these digital tools real briefly, and then at the end kind of talk about how we analyze what's effective, what's not, and how to kind of put it all together to use them all in conjunction with each other. So when I talk about customer engagement, what I'm referring to is at a higher level, when you engage with your customers, what you're trying to do. We all know that people buy and sell from people they like, and you hear that over and over, and I just saw Kirby Hasseman post that on Facebook this morning. He was at the Tom Show and the regional show up in Ohio yesterday and was talking about how it's so great to go to these regional shows and engage with your customers and build those relationships. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not necessarily talking about engagement on your social channels, although I will touch on this briefly in a little bit. But we're talking about the whole idea that people buy from someone they know, someone they like, and someone they trust. And some of these tools that we talk about today are going to help you do those things, so you don't have to be like this guy and go out and engage your customers like that. But before we get started, and I apologize if any of you guys have ever been in one of my education sessions and have seen this, but I saw this once in a presentation a while ago, and it was always a good way to break the ice. Does anybody know what the first promotional product was in the industry? Yeah? You can probably guess by now. I was once told it was a promotional button for George Washington's run for president back in 1789. And I honestly don't know if that's true or not, but I always thought it was a good way to start off a presentation. So if you didn't know that, there you go. First promotional product. Today, obviously, the promotional products industry has changed dramatically. You all have seen some of these stats that PPAI does a very good job of putting out every year about how effective promotional products are and why it is that we exist, why we complement the advertising industry in general with promotional products. It's one of the most effective advertising mediums out there, and it helps your customers recall, or their customers recall their business and gives you a reason to be and why we provide that value as the middle layer in this industry. And some of these studies were done a few years ago, but PPAI recently put one out too, and I'm not going to go into a dissertation on millennial versus non-millennial selling. We've seen enough of those at the trade shows recently, and the recent study actually involved mostly millennials, and so I think it was a little surprising to people that the younger generation still sees promotional products as being a very valid and effective means of advertising. So before the digital channels that we're talking about today came along, if you go all the way back in time to see the channels we had to advertise, there's been quite a dramatic change, most of it being in the last few years. If you go back into the 1800s, you can see billboards being used. Back in the 1920s, you could see radio advertising start to come along. A couple decades later, you saw television advertising. In the 1950s, a word that we don't like to talk about much anymore, but we had telemarketing come along. And then in the 70s, we started to see early e-commerce, not in terms of the web that you know today, but e-commerce in terms of electronic transactions being done between businesses. And then in the 1990s, you started to see websites pop up. We had Google and YouTube. We saw the first CRM applications come out where you could manage your customer database and keep track of your conversations with them, things like that. And then a little bit later, we started to see social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And as you all well know, at least if you've been paying attention the last few months, there's been a few, well, our newly elected president who really loves Twitter, and I'm not talking about his Twitter feed, but if you haven't been using Twitter, it's something we're going to talk a little bit about as well. So these are all tools that you can use today to help you get in front of your customers, to engage with your customers, and that's what we're going to talk about today, some of the tools that you can use. Now, if you're curious about how many of these type of tools are available to you today, I'm going to throw this up real quick. Again, not to make your mind explode, but the sheer number of digital marketing technologies out there today is crazy. And this was recent. This was updated back in, I think, March of last year, and so there's even more today. But I saw this at the North American Leadership Conference a couple of years ago. We had a speaker about marketing technology, and he talked about the thousands and thousands and thousands of applications out there that you can use to communicate with your customers. So we're going to talk about each one of these today for about 5 minutes. I'm just kidding. We're going to skip over all of those because obviously there's way too many. We're going to focus on the simple ones. And what we're going to talk about is how can you leverage these basic tools? Of the ones I mentioned initially, not the 5,000 you just saw on that page, how do you leverage the tools to help you better engage with your customers? But before you get too worried about me telling you that you need a website and a social media presence, there still is the #1 tool out there you use to engage with your customers, and I'm sure you all know what that is. Yes, it's the telephone. Even those of you who don't like to talk on the phone, it's still the #1 way you can pick up a phone, call your customer, and help build that relationship. So I'm going to not talk about the telephone today. We're going to talk about some of these other things. And I'm going to start off with websites. And I imagine a lot of you have websites by now. Back in the early days, websites used to look like this. And this is not what Distributor Central's website ever looked like. But we did, as a joke once on April Fool's Day, switch our website over to this. But if any of you remember the early 1990s, this is kind of what sites looked like. They weren't really user-friendly. They weren't interactive. They weren't database-driven, so to speak. And any of you who are on the call who know anything about HTML remember something called the blink tag, where you could make text blink on your page, things that we really, really don't want to see these days. So this is what websites used to look like. And these days, they're all over the map. We have websites for suppliers. Distributors have their own websites to market their own companies. You see a lot of niche sites out there where people are focusing on very specific product categories, microsites sometimes they're called, and then company stores, which is something that we seem to be getting asked more and more about over the last couple of years as people have clients who want an easy purchasing option for their employees to go in and purchase branded items. One of the things that you hear about a lot in terms of websites, especially in the last year or two, is the word responsive. So if it's not a buzzword that you've heard yet or you know about, responsive basically means your website responds to the platform on which your customer is viewing it. In the old days, not too long ago, we would build a website for somebody that was optimized for a desktop computer, and even worse than that, for a specific size of a desktop computer. And then if they really wanted a mobile presence, we would build a mobile website completely separate, and the desktop website would have some code in it, and it would understand if the customer was browsing that site on their mobile phone, and if they sensed that they were on a mobile phone, it would shoot them over to the mobile website. So it took a lot of duplicated effort. It was a lot of work. So these days we build what we call responsive websites that respond to all platforms. And so if your website is not responsive, it's something definitely to take a look at. The service providers out there now, us included, most of their platforms all include an option to have a responsive website. And so you certainly want your customers to be able to browse your site on their phone if they need to look up some quick product ideas or get in touch with you. So take a look at that if you haven't already looked into upgrading to a responsive website. And if you're wondering why that's important, if you haven't seen any of the latest studies out there yet, the website traffic in general around the world, the last I saw was upwards of 60%, even more, and continuing to grow in terms of the amount of traffic that's coming through websites on mobile devices. Now, on our e-commerce sites in the promotional products industry, that number is not quite as high, and certainly the actual purchasing and configuration of promotional products can get quite complex, and so that number has been slower to grow in our industry than it has in other industries, but it's definitely on the rise and it's definitely important. And so of all the things you can look at with your website, that's one that I would suggest looking at first. So a few things, just to touch briefly on a few things that you can look at in terms of elements that are part of an effective website. And when I'm talking about effective websites, I'm kind of focusing here on your average distributor that has a website to show off their presence, to kind of show who they are, and not so much as a hardcore e-commerce site. Like the 4 imprints and those sites out there are very important in this industry, obviously, and do very well. And we're not trying to compete specifically against them. The average distributor in this industry is using their website more as a portfolio or a means of communicating with their distributor. So it doesn't have to be a duplicate of some of those big e-commerce sites out there. We want to use our websites to kind of tell a story, who we are, and why you're special. I don't know about you, but when I consider purchasing from somebody new, 99% of the time I go out and check out their website first. And so it's important to have a nice online presence to kind of tell who you are. Case studies are extremely important and can be very valuable in terms of convincing people to use you for marketing recommendations or promotional products or whatever it might be that you're trying to convey across your website. Client recommendations and testimonials are very important. Obviously, having your contact information on there. You'd be surprised how many websites don't have a contact form or email address or phone number on them. And so there's no point in hiding behind your website. Make sure you have contact information easily visible on there. Having product search on your website is important, and it doesn't have to be the primary reason of your website, but it does need to be a component. If you're on the phone with a customer or you're sending them an email and you want to be able to suggest a few products for an upcoming project they have going on, it's a very quick and easy way to highlight a couple products, drop them into a quick email, send it to your customer. They can click on a link and go back to your website and see more details about those products and see if it might fit their budget and needs. So product search as a component is an important piece. And obviously having fresh content, particularly if you are doing some work on attempting to have your website show up in the search engine optimization, having fresh content on the site is extremely important in terms of having those websites find and index your site and keep going back to your site because you have fresh content. So that's just some basic elements of an effective website. On the technical side, there are a number of things to consider too. Responsive we talked about. Make sure your site can be viewed on tablets and phones and everything else, and your customers don't have to zoom in and out and scroll around to find contact information. The product search we talked about as being a component of your site. Make sure it's, that you're using a platform that has a powerful product search. People want to be able to filter by price range or by production time or by color. So make sure it has all of those options. It's easy to use. It's user-friendly. It has tools to allow them to send products to themselves or share them. Social integration and sharing tools on your website can be extremely valuable in terms of people sharing your website with their friends and their colleagues and their coworkers. So make sure it has social integration or sharing links on the catalog pages. One that comes up a lot is cost transparency. There are a lot of websites out there where you have the product information. It's kind of like the printed catalog. It's a picture. It's maybe a base price, but you can't actually order it. You can't actually find out what all the additional charges are in terms of run charges or setup charges or shipping charges. So if you can, use a platform that allows you to have all that cost transparency built in. If it were me and I were going to Amazon and I ordered a product, and then at the end of the process it said, well, there's going to be some upcharges and overrun charges and shipping charges. We don't know what they are now, but we'll put them on your invoice when we figure it out. I'd go to the next site and buy. And that may just be me, but we see that a lot. And so having the ability for customers to be able to look and find all those upcharges and shipping charges, do shipping calculations based on where they are, is a very important thing and growing more and more important as we attempt to compete with the Amazons of the world, the 4 imprints of the world, and things like that. If your customers are ready to buy, you might as well let them. Virtual sampling tools are very popular these days. A lot of people, they may not be able to touch and feel that product on your website like they could if you took them to an end-user show, but they can see what it looks like with their logo on it. So having a virtual sampling function on your website that allows them to upload their logo, put it on that coffee mug or that shirt or that tumbler or whatever it might be is a pretty powerful tool in terms of allowing them to visualize what these products are going to look like with their logo. And as I mentioned, if you can make it e-commerce enabled and they're ready to buy right online, which we're seeing more and more, particularly in the younger generations, might as well let them. If you've got all those costs and everything already built into the site and you've got a shopping and checkout functionality that allows them to do it, go ahead and let them buy on the website. Don't force them to call you if they're ready to buy. Just a few things on some of these sites, and I put a few of these sites up here because I have seen some of these sites at the awards ceremony at the PPI Expo in Las Vegas, and they will routinely win awards for their website. So a few things you see on some of these sites. On Branders, easy link to track your order. If I place an order, I can quickly log in, enter my order number, and see where that is in terms of production and shipping. Very visible phone number, as I mentioned. Have a phone number on your front page. They also have a live chat tool you can see over there on the left-hand side, so you can chat with a customer service operator. And these are very easy to implement on any platform. It doesn't matter who's hosting your website. You can implement a live chat platform that you can turn on and off depending on the time of day you want to be available. There are hosted applications out there too where you can pay for a service to have somebody answer those chats for you if you're out on the road or at a customer's office. So some things to think about. Not only Branders, but many sites take full advantage of using discount codes. Those can be a huge conversion tool in terms of getting somebody to actually place a call to you or place an order directly on your website. So just a few things that I've seen on these sites that have worked very well for our customers and some of the larger sites. Another example of using coupon codes to keep somebody on your site. On this particular site, which is a niche site that focuses on the wedding magnet industry, or save the date industry, they constantly have some sort of coupon code on the home page, and it generates a lot of calls. And they have it pop up. It's called a modal. I'm sure you've seen it on sites. If you go to their site, a little window pops up and asks you to put in your email address to get discount codes in the future. And you would be shocked at the number of people that actually are okay with that, and they type in their email address. So they've built a pretty large mailing list by having that on their site and offering these coupon codes. So something to check out as well. The search we talked about as being a component of your site. Some of the things that I talked about briefly that you want to have in your search. You want to give them the ability to search by production time. If they know they have an event next week and they want to see only products that can be produced in that amount of time, they need to be able to do that. Same for minimum quantity. If they have some low minimums, they're trying to find out some products that they could get for just 12 or 24, whatever it might be. That's important. Being able to search by price range so they can find things that fit into the budget for that particular project, important as well. Some other ones we have on here, union made, whether they have rush available, country of manufacture if you're trying to find products manufactured in the U.S. Some other key things to have in your search. As far as the social sharing, you've all seen those. They're on a lot of websites. Most of the platforms in the industry have this available to you now that you can turn on and off. In this case, you see some links to like or share a product on Facebook. We've got Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Pinterest on there as well. So I've seen a lot of distributors who have done a very good job of routinely sharing product suggestions on their Facebook pages so their customer can see those. A lot of them have created Pinterest catalogs to put products into catalog or into groups on Pinterest for their customers to browse. So some pretty powerful tools that you can and should have on your website. The email a product function is a good one too. If you're on this website and you very quickly want to be able to send this or a handful of products to your customer, that makes it very easy to do. It puts your header in there. If this were your website, it would put your header in there, some images of the product, description, pricing, things like that as well. Request more info. If somebody wants to reach out to you very quickly and get an idea back on this product in terms of shipping or a quote, things like that, having a function where they can do that very easily from a particular product or from the website in general is a tool that you certainly want to have on your website as well. And in the virtual sampling we talked about, you can see that Add Your Logo button down at the bottom. That would allow the customer to upload their logo and see what it looks like on that shirt. And down at the bottom you see a couple buttons there for product options and sales tools. The product options button is basically where they could see what the run charges and the setup charges are, perhaps for embroidery or screen printing or whatever it might be. And the sales tools tab, sometimes you find under there things like artwork templates or one sheets that they can print out, things like that that allow you or your customer to quickly be able to share information about that product. In terms of the sharing tools I talked about, those work great on mobile as well. We see a lot of people now using their websites on their mobile phones. They're standing in a trade show perhaps, they see a product that's very interesting to them and they know they have a client that's working on a project where that product might come in handy. just right there on their phone, they could very quickly pull up that product, hit the email product button. It formats a nice little email with their logo and information about the product and sends it off to their customer. And while I'm talking about sharing and email and things like this, people ask me a lot of times what the future of some of this stuff is going to be in terms of websites and how they work. Some of you may or may not be familiar with that device. It's on the screen now. That's the Amazon Echo product. Maybe some of you have it in your house. She's called Alexa, or he. I think it's a she. Mine's a she anyway. So these things can be connected to virtually anything in your house these days. And there have been a couple people in the industry dabbling with how to leverage this kind of tool in the industry. And when I was at the Technology Summit last year that PPAI puts on, they had a couple futurists speak, and everybody was asking what the next big paradigm shift is going to be in our industry. And one of the things we talked about was several years ago, websites became the next big paradigm shift in the mobile and the World Wide Web. The ability to have a website and showcase products or even sell online. The next big shift was mobile. Now that we can have our websites available to our customers on mobile, and they can search, share, and even order products on mobile, that was the next big shift. A lot of these people talked about these personal assistant type devices like Amazon, and Apple has one coming out, Google now has one out. They're talking about these as kind of being the next big paradigm shift in what we do. And I know, I walk into my office in the morning and I typically ask Alexa what the weather is and if I have any appointments coming up while I'm multitasking on some other things. So I know that I use it a lot, and we've been testing it a little bit on our end, and I know other people have too, but think about the situation where you could be sitting at your desk typing an email to a customer, and you could ask Alexa to send tech products to you, or whatever products. So you ask her to do a search, she says she's found these products, you say to email it to David, and the next thing you know, I get an email in my inbox with some suggestions of products that came from just you saying a couple of words to the Alexa device or whatever device you might have. It's pretty interesting stuff, and there's not a lot of people doing things with it yet in the industry, but I think this is something you're going to see in the future as we move forward. And I'm not just talking about us, even though we do have this in development. There are others doing it too. The virtual sampling on your websites I talked about, in case you're not familiar with it, most of you probably are, this is really all it is. I click on an Add Your Logo button, I upload my logo, I put it on the cup, I can then save it off as an image or a PDF or email it to myself, or send it to my customer and show them very quickly what that product's going to look at with their logo on it. Pretty easy to use. There's a variety of levels of virtual sampling all the way up to the web-to-print type situation where this would actually create print-ready art that I could then send to the supplier. So it's something to look at. And I know that was a very vicious, quick run-through of websites. But those are just a little bit of the things that we see, that I've seen over the last several years, things that are working for customers, not working for customers on their websites, some things to think about. So pick back through there when you get a chance, and then take a look at your website and see what you guys might be missing. I'm going to jump into video real quickly. Video has become more and more popular over the last few years as a means of showcasing products or ideas on our websites. And it's very effective, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But they come in a variety of flavors. You see product videos out there, and this one you're seeing on the screen was done by A+ Wines. It's definitely a product video, but it's kind of done from a comedic standpoint or a fun standpoint. So you see a lot of those out there. But these can be very effective, and they can drive a lot of traffic to your website or keep visitors on your website. Now, they can be educational as well, and we see a lot of suppliers creating videos specifically for distributors or even end-user friendly videos to put on your website where your customers can go see how this product might impact their lives or work for a particular project that they're working on. So it's something to take a look at. And I'm not saying you have to go out there and produce your own videos. There are a lot of pre-made videos by suppliers out there. And then there are libraries of videos out there, such as Video Farm, if anybody's familiar with Video Farm. They have a whole library of end-user friendly videos from suppliers that you can pick and choose from and embed onto your website. So that's something to check out as well. And fun videos is kind of the last category. And I see a lot of distributors do this as well. They create fun videos that kind of, they endear people to them. And as we talked about in one of the early slides, people buy from somebody they know, somebody they like, and somebody they trust. And the video piece can fit into any of those. And particularly, they can fit into the like part. if you're posting videos about yourself on your YouTube channel or your Facebook page or whatever it might be, they can be things that really drive traffic and gain you extra followers. So it's something to definitely consider. As far as effectiveness, I don't know if you guys know this, but YouTube is actually one of the biggest search engines on the planet. Behind Google, more people search for help, for products, for things on YouTube than most of the other search engines combined. And so that's, if you think about that for a minute, it's pretty incredible in terms of having videos out there. If people are searching for a product or how to use a product, there are a ton of people out there on YouTube searching for these type of things. I mean, we're seeing over 100 million hours of video uploaded each month on YouTube, which is an incredible amount of video. But more importantly than that, some recent studies have shown that if you have video on a page on your website or you have text on a page on your website, 20% of those visitors are likely to stay and read the entire page, whereas if you have a video on that page, 70% of them will actually watch the video. And this is, again, maybe a generational thing. I know some people don't like to sit and watch a video. Some people would rather read text, and I kind of bounce back and forth myself. But videos are definitely a powerful and effective way to get information out there. And that same study also said that visitors will stay on a site that has video 7 times longer than they would with a site without. So if those numbers don't encourage you to at least check out implementing some video on your website, it's definitely something to take a look at. And as I mentioned, don't be afraid to have fun. A couple years back, we kind of did this fun music video going into the PPAI Expo to try and encourage people to stop by our booth. And it was basically to show off our personality and get people to come by the booth on a very low budget, obviously, as you can tell. And it is to sell, but it's in a less sales, from a less sales standpoint, so to speak. It's not a hardcore sales pitch. It was a fun video to try and encourage people to come by the booth and see what we do, but also be educational at the same time. So the fun videos can be used to show off your facilities as well. I see a lot of suppliers create videos that kind of show off the factory, show off their staff, things like that. So in terms of marketing from supplier to distributor, that's been a pretty effective thing for suppliers to do as well. And so this fun video that we did, there was a comment I saw Kirby Hasseman post afterward saying, I learned a lot about their software, but I also learned that I want to party with Dave. So there you go. Those all came from Kirby Hasseman, who does a ton of video online. If you guys haven't seen that, he has really taken video to the extreme in terms of showing how it can be effective of reaching customers, delivering both fun content and educational content. And it doesn't have to be expensive. That video you just saw, and that was an old one. I've gotten a little better at it these days, but we don't have a massive video budget like some people do. And so literally that video was done with a green sheet on the wall, a couple of lights in the basement, and a DSLR camera. So it doesn't have to be super expensive. The budget can be anywhere from $100 to $100,000 and on up. A lot of these are filmed on iPhones these days. We actually, when we're at shows these days, I'll do a lot of interviewing people or capturing testimonials, and most of the time I use my iPhone with a microphone plugged in, so I can get up close with the microphone and so you can have good quality audio. But the iPhone does a very good job of shooting decent video as long as you're in a well-lighted area. Otherwise you can get video cameras that really aren't very expensive but take very high quality, high def video. They can be done in your basement. They can be done in a studio. You can have internal staff do it like you just saw me do, and you probably don't want to do that, so you might want to get somebody who might be a little better at acting, or pull in professional talent when you need to. The video you saw from A+ Wines, they actually paid for a singer to come into the studio and do that bit where he was singing in the studio. In terms of creating the videos yourself, if you want to do that, there's all sorts of software out there to do it. I personally use an application called Vegas Video that I believe it used to be owned by Sony. I can't remember who they sold it to, but if you look up Vegas Video, you'll see it. They have various levels of it. Not very expensive, super easy to get up to speed on it. Adobe obviously has their platform as well, which has a little bit of a steeper learning curve, but it's pretty powerful stuff as well. There's a ton of shareable content and libraries out there. I routinely use stock video from places like Video Blocks and Audio Blocks for video and audio. So those are things to check out as well. If you want to do some work and create your own videos, there's a lot of stock video out there that you can pull from, and audio and soundtracks and sound effects and everything else. So something to keep in mind. I threw this one up there real quick just to show you. This is the one I actually filmed in front of that green sheet in my basement. Our regional show is going on right now up in Ohio, Michigan, and comes down to St. Louis and Kansas City next week, and so this was done for them. I'm actually standing in front of that $2 green sheet in my basement, and the rest was done using the software I mentioned. And so super easy to do once you get up to speed on using the software, and the budget for this was a couple of beers on a Friday night in my basement, so pretty cheap. Okay, so that's video. Social media, a lot of you probably already know some of what I'm going to talk about today. There are a number of social media channels you can get into out there. I'm just going to touch on some of the main ones and some of the reasons that you might want to launch a presence on social media. It's a fantastic way to reach out to your customers. I mean, I see a lot of our supplier and a lot of our distributor and a lot of our regional association posts coming across my feed every single day on Facebook and Twitter and some of the other platforms as well. So it's a great way to get information out there very quickly, similar to email, but not having to blast them with email blasts all the time. Not that email blasts are bad. They're very effective, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But there's different reasons why you would use social over email. It depends on what you're trying to do. You know, the social media channels have also become a great mechanism of getting new customers and leveraging existing customers in terms of testimonials and things like that. And so it does work very well for that. It's a great way to get referrals and recommendations. I routinely see people posting on Facebook saying, hey, you know, check out the supplier. I know you've got this project going on. They've got the product I think you're looking for. And if you're looking at that image over to the right, you can see that that's actually PPAI's website or Facebook page. There are a number of groups out there in the industry too that if you're not involved in them on Facebook, you should check out. There's one called Promotional Products Professionals, and in between a lot of the arguments that occur on that page, there is a lot of actual very effective information that gets posted on there and people helping each other out, which is something that I've always thought was pretty cool about this industry, that I see distributors and suppliers helping each other out even when technically they are competitors. It's a very collaborative industry, and one of the things that I really like about this industry. Social media is also a fantastic place to be essentially a landing page for your calls to action when you're promoting things through your email list or through social media posts. You can embed sign-up forms in there. You can feature products on there. There's all sorts of things you can do. But it also is a great place just to show your social side. You know, social media is used a lot for that fun piece of what I was talking about earlier in terms of getting your customers to like you before they can trust you, before they can buy from you. So again, when I'm looking to buy from somebody new or working with a new partner or company, I tend to check out their social media channels as well as their website. So one of the things that that works very well. Now, if you've never seen one of his presentations, I will say that the #1 reason for salespeople to go social based on Dana Zezo is to warm up your cold calls. I saw that in one of the first social media presentations I ever saw in this industry, and that is very true. Like I said, before I talk to a potential new vendor or customer, a lot of times I go check out their Facebook pages. So if you're going to start calling on people, having posts out there to get them to know you on social media channels is a very easy way to warm up your cold calls. There's obviously a number of social media channels out there. A good chunk of you are probably on Facebook. Twitter has become a great way of communicating in this industry as well. There are a lot of companies out there on Twitter now. It depends on your demographic and your customer base. Which one of these, if you had to choose one, is going to work well for you. We're on all of them, and some of them work well for some types of announcements. Others work well for other types of announcements. It kind of depends on what you're going for and where your customers are. We personally have more followers on Facebook than we do on Twitter, but the response and the engagement we get on Twitter is very high as well. So it's something you kind of have to play around with and figure out what you're doing. LinkedIn is a popular one too, particularly at the corporate level, to have a presence as a company where you can post more business information. It's a great way of recruiting too if you're looking for new people, things like that. And then Instagram, of course, it has become the place where people post a lot of photos. Less information, more photos. It's used heavily at the trade shows. I see a lot of pictures posted, and we use it a lot at the trade shows as well. And then, of course, there may be a few of you out there who are on Pinterest, or other than looking for ideas on decorating your home, which is what my wife tends to do on Pinterest all the time. I see a lot of companies in the industry really starting to leverage this too in terms of being a place where they can post a lot of images and product ideas as well. And last but not least, there may be a handful of you out there on Snapchat. And if you're trying to figure out how to use Snapchat in this industry, I think everybody's still trying to figure that out. Personally, I use it a lot for a charity event I'm involved in, and it has become effective there. In terms of using it for business, it's more difficult to find followers on Snapchat. They have to actually find you and sign up and things like that. But if you've used Snapchat and played around with the photo filters that they have, one of the powerful things that it does have that you can leverage as a company if you're holding an event or something is the ability to create your own Snapchat filters. We have sponsored these or created our own at a number of events over the last year where you set up, it's called a geo filter. Basically, you set up the area where the filter is active, and you create the filter. And so anybody who's using Snapchat at that event can take a picture on Snapchat. They can apply your custom filter with your logo on it and either post it to Snapchat. They can download it. What we typically do is we'll download it and then post it to Twitter and Facebook. It's somewhat of a virtual photo booth, so to speak. So that's been something that's been pretty popular too, and we enjoy using those at events. On to blogs. I don't know how many of you out there are blogging, but there are a lot of bloggers out there in this industry. And blogging is, I mean, there's obviously, just like with social, there's a number of reasons to blog out there. It's a great place to tell your story, and we talked about your website as kind of being a place where you tell your story and what makes you an effective business partner and things like that. The blog portion of your website can be the place where you tell that story and you do those case studies. It can be very educational. You can teach people how to use products. You can talk about specific projects you've worked on where certain products were effective. You can use it to in addition to telling stories and educating, just by having those stories out there, it's a great way to allow you to build credibility and have your customers build their confidence in you, so they can get to the point where they're comfortable working with you and purchasing from you. And it's been incredibly effective. I've got some numbers here from Bill Petrie. If any of you know Bill Petrie, he has a company called Brandivate, and he posts a lot. He is. I always have admired his tenacity in terms of being very consistent with how often he posts. And there's a number of reasons he does it. I'll mention those here in a minute. But he posts very consistently, and he uses it a lot to drive traffic back to his website. And a blog can be very effective at building your SEO, your search engine rankings for your website, to build traffic to go back to your main website where you might have product specials and things like that going on. And so that's another reason to be using it. You can use social media to promote the fact that you have new posts on your blog, and that's very powerful as well. And when he does it, he tends to follow what he calls the 80-20 rule, where 80% of his blog posts are designed to build readership. That is, they are designed to be educational, informative, talk about specific topics that are going on in the industry that he wants to educate people about, and 20% of it is used for actual selling. And so he builds his readership by having it be a place where people want to go to read this type of information, but at the same time, he's using it to slip in the occasional sales pitch to get you to have confidence in him and purchase from him. So that's why he does it. And here's a quote from him. Basically, he said, being consistent, focusing on SEO, relentless promotion, writing for your audience, and keeping the 80-20 rule top of mind will set you apart from the competition who's either unwilling or unable to engage with their target audience through content marketing. And so and we talk about content marketing, we were talking about blogs and social media and things like that. So he's worked on that quite a bit over the years, and he teaches a lot of classes in it too. So if you're interested in learning a lot more about blogging, be sure to check out one of his classes as well. So that's the quick rundown on blogging. Let me talk a little bit about email marketing. I get a lot of people who ask me why we're still doing email marketing. They tell me that email marketing is dead, everybody's on social media or whatever's coming next, and I'm here to tell you it's not dead. If the people out there who think email marketing is dead probably aren't using it correctly. Email marketing can be extremely effective when used correctly, and when you have effective subject lines and content and calls to action, and I'll talk about all those here in a minute. And making sure that your email marketing is, it's not impersonal or purely promotional, but it's more friendly and helpful. At least in my experience, the emails that are friendly, helpful, they provide fun and entertaining content and perhaps have a call to action embedded in there that's very targeted in terms of something I'm trying to do. Those have been the most effective emails that provide that kind of meaningful one-on-one engagement with my customers when I'm sending those out. It can also be coordinated with your social media posting and your blogging and your website content to bring all these things together to make it even more effective. So when we talk about email marketing and having a call to action, you can use all of the other pieces of your digital plan in terms of your website and social media to be that call to action. A study I saw recently said that 72% of the people, if let's say you had somebody come to your website and sign up for a new account, and they get the option to be contacted in person by phone or by email, 72% of them are going to check that box that says they want to receive communication via email. 91% of them will say that they do want promotional information from you when they sign up for your email list. So if you word it in such a way in your opt-in form that says, would you like me to send you specials or things like that, 91% of those people are going to say yes. So that's pretty impressive. In terms of the actual ROI and the cost of email marketing, at least in the B2B sector, we're seeing that email marketing can still be the #1 ROI in terms of all the digital marketing initiatives. They reported that they were getting an ROI of $36 for every dollar spent, and that's because email marketing can be such a low cost per recipient that you get in front of them in their email. And I'll talk about some of the ways you can do this inexpensively or even for free here in a second, but it is still one of the #1 ROIs for all businesses. And in the business to consumer sector, a lot of companies reported that 23% of their sales were a result of the email marketing they were doing. And so if you're using email marketing and social media, I like to say that email marketing works best to drive sales and customer acquisition and retention, whereas social media is used more so on the customer engagement side. So you can't really say that one is more effective than the other. It's kind of like comparing apples and oranges. But both of them are a key component of a cross-channel digital marketing plan. And cross-channel, I just mean you've got your website, you have your email marketing, you have social media and everything else. So using them all together is what makes it so effective. Email itself is extremely sticky. I don't know about you guys, but when I get an email that I'm interested in, but it's not something I have time to look at this moment, I kind of shove it in a folder that tells me to look at it again tomorrow. So it stays in front of me, whereas the posts on social media, as you know, they kind of drop off the bottom of the list at the end of the day or whenever. So email can be very sticky in terms of keeping it right in front of you. Lastly, the email blasts, particularly that the suppliers are sending out for distributors, those are being indexed on a lot of the platforms out there. I know on ours, we take all those email blasts that go out and we index them in our database. So if you go in and use our search tool to search for products, you're not only searching the product database, but you're searching all the email specials that went out that we've indexed as well. So for suppliers, it's pretty important, but for you guys as well. I mean, your customers may keep those emails in their inbox indefinitely. A few tips in terms of email marketing. If you don't have a platform to do this on, there are a number of low-cost providers out there. For example, if you have less than 2,000 customers, MailChimp is completely free. There's no cost to use it at all. And MailChimp has a very effective tool to go in and design very nice-looking emails and get those out to your customers. You basically upload the customer list. It has a tool in there where you can craft a very nice-looking email, put some information in there, perhaps some product specials, whatever it might be, and send that out to your list. A lot of the industry service providers have this as well, more so on the supplier side because the suppliers are attempting to reach the distributor list since since we as service providers have a lot of distributors in our database, they come to us and use us to send out email blasts to the distributors. Having friendly and helpful content in your emails and having a conversation, big things that are important. People want to think that you're talking to them directly. When you do email marketing, there's a way that you can actually put variables in the email where your customer's name appears at the top of the email. I'm sure you've all seen this before, where it says, "Hey Dave, go check out these specials." So make them personal, make it meaningful, make it one-on-one, and that will help you get more emails opened in their inboxes. The subject lines that you use and the calls to action in your email can be extremely important. And you can test these too. You can send out an email blast and cut it in half and use one subject line for one half and one for the other and see which works better. That could be very important to do. And the calls to action you have in your emails. We have found that having one focused call to action tends to work better than having a half a dozen calls to action in a single email. And I think that seems to tend to be true across the industry when I talk to other people as well. So having a unified call to action in your email can be very important. The second subject line is something you don't hear a lot of people talk about. It's something that has come up a lot as people have been reading their email more on mobile. And when we talk about the second subject line, I'm talking about that little bit of text that appears underneath an email, underneath the subject line in an email. And if you look at these two emails to the right, you'll kind of get a sense of what I'm talking about. The first one down there, it has the subject line, "Take a bite out of these deals," and right underneath it says "View offer online, view all offers." Well, that's not as enticing to me to open as the one above it where it actually says 10% off these new products from Sarge Knives. I'm more apt to open that first one because they've leveraged that second subject line in their email. And in fact, in this particular case, this is one of our supplier customers, and they were sending out email blasts, and they all tended to look like that one at the bottom. So we worked with them to show them how to use a second subject line, which essentially is just the first text in your email. So the first line of text in the body of the email is going to appear in most browsers underneath the subject line. And when they did this, when they changed it and you took advantage of having that second subject line, they got 20% more opens on that top email than they got on the bottom. So it can be pretty effective. There are a lot of tools also out there that include, MailChimp has it, some other tools out there have the ability to actually test your emails before you send them out to make sure your subject lines aren't too long or to make sure you don't have things in there that are going to fire off spam filters. So I'd encourage all of you to take a look at those as well when you're looking into email marketing. And last but not least, in terms of email, one big no-no, please do not use Outlook or Gmail to send mass emails to your customer list. That is probably the best surefire way to get on a spam list or a blacklist where all of your emails are ultimately going to be blocked. Use one of the tools out there like iContact or MailChimp that has a direct line to the backbone of the email network out there, and they basically get certified as a legitimate sender that is not sending spam, and so that allows you to send to your entire email list at one time versus going in here and typing 200 email addresses into your Outlook. So don't do that. Okay, real quickly, how we talk about all these things and bring them all together and analyze them. Basically, what you're trying to do, and this differs from company to company and person to person, we want to look at what works, what doesn't. You want to evaluate your website, your social media, your email marketing, and adjust your efforts to optimize what you're doing, basically. If you're sending out an email and nobody's opening it, you need to rethink the subject line or the content of the email. If you're not seeing traffic on your website, you want to think about how you're driving traffic there through social media and email marketing or the content that's on your site. If we start with the website and look at that first, I threw up a chart here that is from our Google Analytics account for Distributor Central. Now, everybody can get a Google Analytics account for free, and if you haven't done this, I would suggest doing it. They've got two platforms out there, one called Google Analytics, one called Google Webmaster Tools. If you go create those accounts on Google and go back to your website, regardless of what platform it's on, Google will give you a snippet of code that you can drop into your website, and if you don't know how to do that, have whomever manages your website do it for you. That will start collecting data from your website and allow Google to start generating these graphs for you. What you're seeing on this screen basically is our overall website traffic over a number of days. And you're you're kind of seeing the diurnal pattern there. You're seeing daytime, nighttime, and that's why it's, you know, kind of a steady fluctuation there. But where this gets very powerful is when you do an email marketing campaign or a social media campaign, you can log into Google Analytics and watch this graph and see how many people are coming to your website or a landing page you set up specifically for an email marketing campaign, and see if people are actually clicking on the link to go to your website or wherever it is you're trying to get them to go. And if they're not, then obviously you need to adjust next time. When we do a social media campaign or an email marketing campaign and we see a big spike in this graph, then we know it's effective in driving people to our website. Google Webmaster Tools has a number of other tools in there as well where you can set up sitemaps and things like that that help the search engines index your site, and it can provide you with some information on how to do that. The analytics piece of it is more of the traffic on your site. This particular page you're seeing, it's a little frightening, I know, but you're actually seeing live traffic on the site. You can see people on your site as they are on there. Not exactly who is on there, but you can see the traffic in real time on your website. So that can be interesting if you're doing marketing campaigns to see what's going on your site. I'm not going to get into a detailed discussion of search engine optimization, since it's, you know, really a subject that there is an art and a science to it, and it's a subject that warrants more than a passing comment. There are a lot of experts out there who can help you with this, and I'm not talking about the ones that fill out the contact form on your website at 3 in the morning and say they're the best SEO person on the planet. I get those all the time. I'm sure you do too. But let me turn that off real quick. There we go. Okay, so when we talk about SEO, though, we're talking about basically getting the search engines to recognize your site and show up. And as you'll see, if you go out there and look for certain products, there are certain websites in this industry that are constantly at the top of the search results. And I can tell you they are spending a ton of money on advertising on Google, a lot of money. And so for you to compete with those in the search engines, you really need to find ways to stand out, to find those niche products that and keywords where you can actually show up in the search results. You're not going to win the top of the search results for pens. You know, there are just too many people out there spending money on that. So find some winnable keywords out there that you can actually get into the search results and show up at the top of those search results for certain categories of keywords. You want to have a solid domain name that pertains to what you do. The URLs on your website should all be very descriptive. If you have a page that's, you know, focused on tumblers, make sure the page name is tumblers, and a number of things you can do that can, from the very simple to the very complex. And the picture I posted over there on the right is basically Google's Search Engine Optimization Starter Guide. They don't make it super easy to find on their site, but if you go out there and search for it, you can find this. There's a multi-page and a one-page, for those of you who don't have the focus to read the entire book. There is a guide out there that will kind of give you the basics on what you need to be doing in terms of optimizing your site for the search engines. There are also a number of tools out there, and you can go back and look through some of these later, that will help you figure out keywords and hashtags and things like that that you can be using in your promotions to make sure your site stands out. In terms of evaluating social media, if you guys are on Facebook or Twitter, you'll know that a lot of them have a built-in analytics tool. The one you're seeing on the right there is from Facebook. That actually allows us to go out and look at our posts and see which ones are performing well, which ones aren't. And that allows us to go back and evaluate what types of content we're posting. So make sure you're leveraging those. This one in particular is showing both organic and paid reach. Facebook, as opposed to Google, can actually be very effective at a much lower budget level to get your posts out there in front of your customers. For a very little amount, you can have a post reach an extraordinarily larger number of people for a much smaller amount of money than you would spend on Google to do the same with getting your site indexed in the search engine. So it's something to take a look at. You can also see engagements in terms of people that are tweeting or retweeting your tweets, and this applies to all the panels as well. And it really, what it does is allow you to go back and take a look at what's working and what's not working and adjust your efforts accordingly. There's just another page there of some of the analytics that are in Facebook and Google. This one shows you all our posts. This was back in December, but it shows us which posts had the highest reach, which ones had the highest engagement in terms of people clicking on them, liking them, sharing them, things like that. Twitter has the same thing. As you can see, our top tweet back in December was actually the post about this session you're sitting through right now when I posted about it that it was going to be done at Expo in Las Vegas. So use those tools, take a look at them, and this is probably about the time in the presentation, and we got to wrap up here in a few minutes, but I've got a few more slides here to show you. But this is about the time people look at me and say, how on earth do you expect me to do all this email marketing, all this social media, optimize my website, reach out to my customers, when really what I need to be doing is selling, engaging with my customers, doing invoicing, collecting payments, all this kind of stuff. And I get it, particularly for the smaller distributors. This seems like a lot of additional work. And there are some tools out there that can help. If you want to do this and you don't have the time to do it, or somebody you can hand it off to, there are some platforms out there that can really simplify this process for you. And Hootsuite is one of them. You can basically set up your Facebook, your Twitter, your Instagram all in Hootsuite and post from a single location, see the activity that's going on in a single location, and look at the analytics in a single location. So it's pretty powerful. If you haven't taken a look at it yet, go check it out. We use this a lot just to save a lot of time in terms of going back and analyzing what's working, what's not, and responding to things, particularly if we're at a trade show and we have a limited staff back in the office. So it's something to check out. This is just a quick example of what the analytics look like in Hootsuite as an aggregated platform. So you can see that I can look at my Twitter, my Facebook, my LinkedIn, my Google Analytics all in one place. Pretty quick and easy way to reduce the need to go to all these different social media platforms when you're going back and analyzing what you've done. Some of the platforms allow you to use it for scheduling. And this can be wildly effective if you've got an event coming up or you're going to a trade show but you want to have posts going out while you're there. You can actually pre-can all your email blasts, all your social media posts, put them in a calendar, and they go out automatically while you're at the trade show. And we do this frequently. The particular screen you're seeing here is actually what I use for the charity event that I sit on the board for here in Kansas City. This is a platform called Mfluence, which is a company in Kansas City that some friends of mine started. So we've been testing their platform and using it. But it does a lot of the same things as Hootsuite. So check those out if you haven't had a chance yet. Email marketing, in terms of evaluating email marketing, some of the easy metrics you have that are easy to understand and make a lot of sense to people are the opens and the clicks. Obviously, we want people to open our emails, and then we want them to click on a call to action if there is a call to action to send them to. This little graphic you're seeing on the right here just shows you the views and the clicks in terms of people that opened my email and those that actually clicked on the call to action that I had in that email. There's some other analytics in there like clicks to views, which are some other numbers you can use to figure out if your emails are being effective. That one is simply of the people that opened the email, how many of those people actually clicked. So all some good analytics to have when taking a look at your email marketing and judging its effectiveness. A lot of times the open rate, you can fix that just by using better subject lines. It's pretty simple. Now, getting them to click on a call to action means that the content and the call to action in the email has to be good as well. Landing pages, I mentioned that. You can have specific landing pages for emails. If your call to action is to click on a link to get more information about something, and it takes them to a form where they can enter their name, email address, etc. So those are powerful to use as well, and some of the email platforms out there allow you to create those automatically. And the call to action, make sure that you're going back to look at the correlation of the desired action. So if the call to action was to click on a link to go to your website, go check your Google Analytics and see if people are coming to your website and from where. It'll tell you from where they're coming, so you know that they're coming from your email blast. Scheduling and coordinating your email marketing with social is very powerful as well. We do a lot of email blasts where we have social posts go out just before or just after, and they're coordinated in our efforts to drive people to a specific call to action. You can see on that graph on the right there, I threw that in there just to show you that not just our website traffic, but our email is being read more and more on mobile devices instead of just desktop. So something to keep in mind. Make sure your emails are optimized to be read on mobile devices as well. You can go back and look at the analytics too and find out what time of the day people are opening your emails. We do that a lot. We have certain days of the week or middle of the day, times like that that work better for emails for us. Videos and animated GIF images that kind of look like embedded videos in our emails tend to get a lot of engagement with our emails. And having the calls to action very, very focused. I don't want a bunch of links and calls to action in my email. If I'm trying to get somebody to do one thing in particular, I want a single call to action. And the subject lines, make them something people like. Get them to open it, and take advantage of that second subject line that I talked about. Now, as I mentioned, all of these go together to create somewhat of a cross-channel approach, social, email, website, etc. There are some platforms out there that let you see all that on one screen. This is the Influence platform I talked about, but there are others out there. And basically, my goal this particular event was one day we were trying to maximize donations to a charity event. So we sent out an email blast that day. We had a number of social media post that day, and you can see the graph at the top there. That line that goes over the top is the traffic to our website. So that overlays our Google Analytics traffic on top of that, allowed us to see that that was a very effective day of social media and email posting to get people to go to our website, and it happened to be the day that we had the most donations to the charity. So that's kind of how you use them all together to go back and look. So as I mentioned, bring all these together, go back and analyze, adjust, and repeat as necessary with all of your digital properties. Figure out what works, what doesn't, and basically use all these to stay in front of your customers. They don't have to replace what you're doing. They're there to help you better engage with your customers because, as we talked about earlier, people buy from someone they know, someone they like, and someone they trust. And all of these things are things that can help you through that entire process of building a customer base and engaging with them. And so with that, I know I brought it right down to the wire. I meant to get through that a little quicker. I apologize, but if there are questions, we can certainly take those now, or I can follow up with you after the event. And Rocio, I'll pass it back over to you.
Yeah. So we do have one question. It's from Jason Vaughan. He wants to know what video software you used.
I personally use a platform called Vegas Video. If you search for it on Google, you'll find it. It used to be a Sony product, but it is now owned by somebody else. And they have a very introductory version that's like $50, I think. And then they've got a pro version for professional filmmakers as well. But it was one of the ones I found the easiest to learn how to use in terms of doing what I do. Adobe's Premiere product is extremely effective as well. It's got a higher learning curve and is obviously more expensive, but Vegas is the one I've been using for several years now.
Excellent, thank you. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to ask away. Well, we didn't know that David, well, I didn't know that David was such a tech or digital world guru. He was also a superstar, a rock star in the making.
Yeah, a wannabe.
And listen, we all have to live our dreams, and there you are living it.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to inform everyone who's here with us, our SAGNY Winter Showcase is next Thursday, February 2nd. Don't forget to register so we can have your badges ready at registration. The show is from 10:30 to 3 p.m. at the Crown Plaza in Suffolk, New York. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to call me. You have David's contact information right here. Please feel free to call him as well, email, or anything that you'd like to do. But again, this webinar has been recorded. It will be up on our YouTube channel shortly. David, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
So it was a pleasure, and hopefully we can have you on later, if not on as a webinar, but maybe at one of our shows.
Sounds great. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for attending today.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Can you all have a good afternoon? Be well and much success. Thank you.